Last but by no means least, we have an NBA basketball star turned author of a children's comic book on diabetes and other chronic conditions. Here to share his personal story from diagnosis to sports star to diabetes advocate is Gary Forbes. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. I'm really thrilled that you're joining us today, and I'm really excited to hear both your personal story and a little bit more about the book you've been writing. You've brought some photos with you, which we can share on screen when appropriate. Feel free to just ask my colleague Teba to pop them on. But let's start at the beginning. Before your diabetes diagnosis even, when did you decide you wanted to become a basketball star?
Oh man, that was very, very early in my childhood. My father built us. My father was a welder at the Panama Canal, amongst other things, and he built us a basketball hoop from his bare hands. He was a welder, so that was pretty easy for him. And I think the first time I ever saw Michael Jordan play basketball, I kind of knew that was what I wanted to do. I fell in love with, the sounds of the sneakers, the basketball bouncing, the ball swishing through the net, and, I was kind of addicted to that.
Yeah, I believe we have a photo of you with that basketball hoop that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And this note on the right, you've said there's an interesting backstory behind it. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so throughout college, I was one of the top players in the country, and I entered the NBA draft in 2008. And although I didn't get drafted, I still had a desire. I knew that was my dream, and I was going to make that work. So I'm a big believer in writing things down. I've always written things down. Have usually always come to pass. It's kind of like you get the thing of, it's a spelling and, you write a spell kind of mindset. But when I wrote that down, I took it to practice with me every day. I just looked at it before practice, after practice, and I felt that, those, putting that energy towards, your dream and purpose, I think it, obviously came to fruition. I still have a lot of things written down that are in the midst of happening. I wrote down that I was going to become an author, soon to be New York Times bestseller. That's
Nice.
on the way. So I'm a big believer in, just living out your passion and dreams and pushing through it and pushing forward.
So you were diagnosed with diabetes as a young adult, I think 19 years old.
Yes.
And I read that you chose to hide your diagnosis as you were worried it might either affect your career or end it, perhaps. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I just at the time in 2007, in 2004, when I was diagnosed, diabetes advocacy wasn't as big as it is now, as well as awareness. So I kind of took on the same attitude as my father. My father was also also a diabetic. My grandfather also passed away from it, but it wasn't a thing that we talked about and, kind of had this, oh, whoa, feel bad for me because I have, this condition. It was, okay, I have this condition. What do I do with it? Or how do I, get past it? So I remember when I was first diagnosed and the doctors came in the room, they turned down the shade. They put down the shades and they told me I have type 1 diabetes, or they told me I was a diabetic. And it just went in one ear, went out the other. One of the things that the doctor said is that I would have to, probably put basketball to the side and worry about my health. But, I'm a very hard-headed person, and I guess that's another superpower of mine. And I just had this optimistic belief that, no matter what the situation was, I was going to be able to get through that. And I remember the first time I had to take, my insulin injections. I was very, very nervous. I'm not good with needles or anything like that, but it was just a learning process, and I was able to get through that. And just being diagnosed at a young adult, I think I'm kind of a hybrid. So I was able to live out my childhood, which a lot of people haven't been able to do. If you're diagnosed pretty early, that's all you know. So I've been a type 1 diabetic now for about 20 years of my life, so about half my life now. And yeah, I just didn't see really didn't see any other story or any experience besides me making it.
Yep. And when did you decide to go public with your diabetes? What was the reaction like? And was that in part inspired by the fact that you'd not seen anybody else doing so?
Yeah, I had a couple of friends that always told me that I had a really unique story to tell. Being one of three people in the history of the NBA to play in the NBA with type 1 diabetes, as well as the only African American to play in the NBA with type 1 diabetes. I guess I had a inspirational story to tell. Uh, I always felt that, all right, I'm living my life. What's the, who am I? What's the big deal? I'm just doing what I wanted to do and what I meant to do. But I realized that my story and my vision and how I perceive things living, and managing, this health condition was needed in this world. I I've gotten tons and tons of DMs from children and parents who are managing type 1 and type 2, and I do see that it is very difficult because luckily for me, I've had the experience of having a father who never really looked at the glass half empty. He was an optimist, very optimistic, and I think that's another one of my superpowers. Everything that I see, everything that I see and do, there's an opportunity to succeed. And I've never ever looked at my life or any situation that I've been in as I can't. I've never used those words. I've always, I can try, and I will, succeed. So I think now being a diabetes advocate, I had no idea how vast and big the community is. And I know that I can help a lot of people, especially just with their mindset and perception of what it is to be diabetic, whether type 1, type 2. Also, I feel that the way that I've lived my life, I think it can be an inspiration to so many different people.
Yep.
I never look at type 1 as a condition. I never use the words disease or chronic disease or things like that. I feel, and this is just my perspective on it. I think me managing my type 1 has made me a better human overall because I have to make sure I eat the right foods. I have to make sure I put the proper things in my body to be a better human and to be an athlete. I always give the analogy that, let's say if you were driving a Rolls Royce or fancy sports car, what kind of gas would you put in it? Super, right? So premium. So this is the best sports car. This is kind of the best vehicle that you have. So why not put the best possible ingredients into it? That's mentally, physically, with exercise, nutrition. So that's kind of my mission and goal I'm in now, to kind of change everyone's perspective on what living or managing type 1 is.
That's fantastic. Before I ask you the next question, we have a really lovely comment from Lisa. So, my son is an aspiring budding basketball player, 10 years old, YMCA League. We talk about how things he has learned through his type 1 diagnosis can help him get to know his body and himself better. And this is a superpower he can use to elevate himself on the court too. You share the same voice. What would your encouragement be for a child to learn how to use their type 1 wisdom to enhance their life on the court? And we'll get your book to you.
Yeah, with that, I feel like he has the tools already, just that mindset, or having you guys as his parents, and letting me know that. I think I had the same experience with my parents. My father never ever. I remember when I was diagnosed, his first words was like, "All right, what are we gonna do now?" Never made it kind of seem that the end was, it was the end of the road, because I had a mission to, become an NBA player. And I was very, very fortunate to have him in my life. And I think my mission is to pass on that same kind of optimistic belief in the world. And that's not just with people managing type 1 or type 2, that's the entire world. Especially now, I think that a lot of people need that push and that inspirational kind of motivation to be a better be a better person for themselves.
Yeah. So to pick up, you've mentioned a few times the word superpowers, and you just mentioned that it's not just limited to diabetes. I know your children's comic book, Soul Survivors, has quite a lot of characters, not just with diabetes, but with other chronic conditions. Can you tell us a little bit about the story, the different conditions that feature in that? What are the characters like?
Right. So Soul Survivors is a story about children with chronic health conditions who use their superpowers, and despite having these health challenges, it's kind of like the real life X-Men. X-Men were mutants and things like that. So I wanted to portray it in real life. I've been all around the world. I've played in different countries, not only the NBA, but I played in countries like China, Italy, Philippines, and all around the world. So I've been able to experience different things and see the world. So I wanted to inspire the world with the Soul Survivors. And this is the first volume of many more volumes to come, highlighting other health conditions such as leukemia, autism, cerebral palsy. And pretty much, I want to give a positive face for each and every single health challenge that there is. I see the commercials all the time on television, and it's kind of a sad, and it's very scary, and I couldn't imagine what a child has to go through when that's the information that they're receiving. Like I said, I was very fortunate to have a very optimistic family, and always pushed me to be a better person, and living my life. So that's my mission, to kind of inspire the world and change their perspective on whatever it is they're dealing with, not only just the health challenges, but overall in life. I have a lot of friends who always call me when they're having let's say a bad day, or a rough time, and I can always see the glass half full in whatever situation there is. And that's the mission of Soul Survivors, to inspire, educate, and empower everyone, and kind of create this inclusive world. I think we live in a world of ignorance where, I've had many friends who say, oh, my grandmother or, my uncle is diabetic, or has diabetes, but they say kind of weird questions. Let's say if I'm having a low blood sugar, they're like, oh, do you need to take your medicine? So I see that there's this gap that needs to be kind of mended, and education and awareness still needs to be at the forefront of all these health challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy to hear as well that it's the first in a series. I imagine this is going to be important.
Many more. Volume 3 is actually set to come out in November, right around Diabetes Awareness Month, which is highlighting the characters with type 1 and type 2. And I'm very, very just excited, because I know that this mission will change the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have one question from the audience just before we wrap up for the day. Jumping back to your basketball career, Azra's asking, there must have been many challenges when blood sugar spikes, you just can't perform. How did you circumvent those moments?
Well, like I said, I think that diabetes made me a better athlete, because I was very on top, and I was very fortunate to have, the medical staff with the Denver Nuggets and the school that I went to, University of Massachusetts. They were, pretty much on top of me to make sure that I was, the best basketball player that I possibly could be. Did have, lows and highs, but I never ever let those things kind of affect my mindset, which ultimately will affect how I play on the court. I was able to just manage that. I think I've had a very I have a tough mindset. My father always talked about just having tough skin no matter what the situation is. And yeah, I never looked at highs and lows as a bad day. It was always a learning experience, and it's like, and we all know, everyone that's living or managing type 1, every day is different.
Yeah.
So it's always weird. No matter, I can eat the same thing every day, I always have different numbers. But yeah, I always looked at it as a learning experience, and it almost forces me to be better than the day before.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share all of that. We've already shared the link to the book for people who are interested. But yeah, thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.